Hi, everyone. How are y'all doing? My name is Alexander Provan. I'm the editor of Triple Canopy, and I want to welcome you all to Live in Concert with Fred Moten and Harmony Holiday. As you might already know, Triple Canopy is a magazine based in New York, and we've worked with Harmony a number of times, especially in the past couple of years, and we're extremely excited to welcome Fred into the fold. I'll just do a brief introduction to both of them. Before I do that, I should let you know, if you don't already know, that this is a listening session, and Fred and Harmony are going to go back and forth, play songs that play recordings of live music, and talk about the experience of live music in relation to the experience of recordings and recordings of live music, especially. And in doing so, reflect on what we've gone through in the past year, or I guess it's almost 2 years now, and prospects for the future in terms of the experience of music and the experience of music together, especially. So Fred, as you all probably know, lives in New York and is a professor of performance studies at NYU. He's the author of numerous books, many or most or all of them foundational to us, or to many of us, and to Triple Canopy's work. So we're especially grateful to him for joining us tonight. Harmony is a writer, dancer, and archivist, also the author of many wonderful books. She's contributed a few times to Triple Canopy, and I'll post links to her work in the chat. And I should say that this conversation continues a series of listening sessions that Harmony and Fred have been doing, which I think the series precedes the pandemic, but has been especially active and meaningful during the pandemic. And yeah, before I go on, yeah, I'll just say that we will post a recording of this listening session within a week or two. Feel free to chat in the window. You'll be able to chat privately with each other or with all. Ask questions if you'd like, and we'll pick them up and pass them along to Fred and Harmony. And depending on how things go, we might spend a few minutes entertaining questions or giving other people the floor at the end. I think that's it for now. Thanks again for joining us. This should last until about 8:30, but there's no precise predetermined end time. Thanks again to Harmony and Fred, and I'm going to pass the mic or the screen off to them.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. What's going on out there?
Going on. Speaking of liveness, we're opening a venue in LA, so I've been thinking a lot about it in terms of how to create good atmospheres for music, and what people's dream shows. One conclusion I've come to is that, like, the standard protocol of concert making and event making has not always been so friendly to artists. Like, if you were to ask some of our favorite artists what their dream live event would be, I don't think anyone's ever asked them that question, is what I'm learning as I ask people things like that. So yeah, what's going on? Also, I've been to a few concerts since things opened up, and they've all been a range of like normal. I told you about the Moodymann show I went to in Miami, and that was like a Florida thing. So that was very Florida, and lots of people were there, and there was no care in the world about how many or how close people were to each other. Yeah. And then Hollywood Bowl opened here, and I was at like a Flying Lotus and Thundercat show the first night it opened. It was like a beta test of opening things, and that was like a weird ghost town, empty, haunted Hollywood, like 100 people in the entire bowl type event that was really weird. And some stuff in between, you know. What about you? What's going on there? I know you did Vision Fest.
Yeah, I went to a couple nights of the Vision Festival, which was cool. One night it was outside at the Clemente Center down in the Lower East Side, and then the other one was at I guess it was in Red Hook in Brooklyn at this gallery space called Pioneer Works.
Oh, I love them.
And that was pretty cool. It was kind of an indoor outdoor thing. There was an outdoor space, and it didn't it felt good. It felt good. It was okay. It was
Yeah.
the music was good.
Yeah.
I heard Jamie Branch,
Oh,
and she blew the stage off,
yeah.
and it was, I was tired. I went there that day, and I was pretty much there all day. I drove there with my friend Jeff Schlanger, who's speaking of live, he's like, if you've ever been to the Vision Festival in New York, or if you've ever been to a kind of live show in New York City that was, in the free jazz vein, and you've seen it. He does this thing called Music Witness. He sits kind of right by the stage, or pretty much right in front of the stage, and he documents the music by drawing. He makes these amazing, beautiful drawings, and he is, I think, it's interesting because when we don't call concert films documentaries, but they are documents.
Mhm.
They're documents of a particular performance on a particular night, and if the filmmaking is sufficiently interesting or good, we know that there's no distinction to be made, between documentation and something that we might want to glorify by calling it artistic, that I almost feel like, man, I had the occasion to listen over the last 2 weeks to this great Black Chicago photographer named Roy Lewis. And he said something the other day where he just said, well, when I first heard the definition of the word documentarian, I thought, that's what I do. And he said it with like extreme pride, like
Yeah.
he was into it, and I'm thinking, man, what if it turns out that all of our highfalutin ideas about what it is to be an artist are just the things, the egomaniacal formulations that one jettisons on the way to being a documentarian, And anyway, but so me and Jeff were kind of hanging out and talking, and the music was good. But I just got tired, and I was so disappointed in myself for being tired, because the last act that night was David Murray's octet, which I had never seen the octet live, just have records, live recordings. And I was like, man, am I so weak that I can't stay up another hour? It's like, couldn't I watch with myself for just a little while, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But the first live performance I actually went to since, post quarantine or whatever you want to call it, was at Blank Forms in Brooklyn. It was R2 Lindsay played a solo set, and that was really cool. That was really great. And again, it kind of disturbed what we might think of under the rubric of live, just because a lot of what he was doing in the solo set was sort of playing with and against himself, using a kind of this tool that allowed him to create these little loops. So he would create these little riffs and loops, and then play with himself while he was doing the loops. And it was cool because, of course, was that a live performance? Is it a live performance if you're playing with yourself, having recorded yourself in that moment, you know?
Yep.
So I have a feeling that maybe a whole lot of what we're gonna do tonight is just mess with the very idea of live.
Yeah.
And while I'm at it, I have to shout out to my friend Emily, Emma McNally. I always want to call her Emily. I fucking always call Emma Emily, and I don't. I think it might be because of the connection between Emma and McNally.
Yeah, the momentum.
But it's also. But I can be looking at her name. I can be reading Emma McNally and still want to say Emily. And I think I want to say it's also Dickinson, you know, in a certain kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But I owe Emma so many letters and a whole bunch of hugs. So I'm dedicating what I play to Emma. Did I just call her Emily again? See,
no, you said Emma.
Anyway, I'm dedicating it to Emma, and but also, and I know I saw Renee Green out there, so I just want to say hey, Renee, and tell Javier I said hey, and I hope I get a chance to see y'all soon. So, okay, all right. Should we play something?
Yes, let's play something.
What do you want to? You want to go first?
I feel like you should go first because
okay,
dedication. So we can dedicate the first song to Emma.
Well, I'm gonna play this to Emma because this is a song that my mom used to play for me. Not this version, but she played it to me all the time, and she played it for me or to me as if she was trying to tell me something all the time. So this version I love because it is live and because I think I might have played it once before in one of our listening sessions. So I hope I'm not breaking a rule by repeating. But what I love about it is that just the first few opening moments, the audience is so there, so present with the performers, and the linchpin of that presence. I think the sort of the real node, you know, where that presence is felt, that co-presence is felt, that refusal of the distinction between audience and performer is felt. With what I think is either the fourth or fifth touch of the conga drum by a great conga player named Earl DeRuin. And so this is a live version of Donny Hathaway playing Little Ghetto Boy. So let's see. Let me get it together.
Really quick.
Thank you very much. Little Ghetto Boy. As you spend your days and nights in the pool room, where you sell caps of madness to the neighborhood. I like the two gentlemen that wrote that song, Stand Now. Ed Howard over here, and Earl DeRuin, conga player.
Okay, so sorry about that. I think I turned the share off when I call myself turning it on because I had it already on. So, but listen, so what I'm gonna do is actually, as great as the song is, the most important parts are what happens before it starts and what happens after it ends. So y'all heard what happens after it ends. You know, I want the two men that wrote that song to stand now. You know,
Yeah.
and Earl DeRuin, you know, there's just that inflection. To me, that inflection in his voice is like Black 1973 all over America, you know, in a certain kind of way. But I did promise y'all the little opening conga part, so I'm just gonna play that and then I'll back away, having already messed everything up. Just let me play that one little part again, and just for you'll hear what I'm talking about. So here we go. You can hear that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That will probably be my next record, I hope. It's entitled Little Ghetto Boy. I hope you like it.
It's like just those first few little hits of the conga, and you can just tell everybody knows that something's about to happen. So I think maybe that's the most important thing about live, that shared sense that there's something about that. Anyway.
Speaking of that, is anyone frozen? Is Fred frozen? Or are people getting like glitchiness happening? Yeah. Well, I'm gonna keep talking and hopefully it'll stop. Yeah, one of my favorite things about live recordings, especially of jazz, is that meta speak, like how Duke Ellington announces his band, and knowing the story behind that, how he used to be super shy and not so debonair, and then he was forced by having a big band to become this personality. And now hearing his voice before he announces like He Loved Him Madly or Black and Tan Fantasy, that's such a big part of the music, just knowing how Duke Ellington speaks and hearing him announce his band. And then, do you know Pee Wee Marquette at all? That guy? Have you heard of him? He worked at Birdland in New York in the 50s and 60s, and at a place called Melody Room. And he was the announcer of all the jazz bands, and he had this amazing voice. And I just wanted to play his voice to get us into that like live vibe. Share.
Ladies and
Everyone
gentlemen, as you know, we have something special down here at Birdland this evening, a recording for Blue Note Records. When you applaud for the different passages, your hands go right over the records there, so when they play them over and over throughout the country, you may be someplace and say, well, that's my hand on one of those records that I dug down at Birdland. We're bringing back to the band set at this time, ladies and gentlemen, the great Art Blakey and his wonderful group featuring the new trumpet sensation, Clifford Brown. Horace Silver on piano, Lou Donaldson on alto. Curly Russell is on bass. And let's get together and bring Art Blakey to the bandstand with a great big round of applause. How about a big hand now for Art Blakey? Thank y'all.
That's all for that. I know it's short, but I just feel like his voice was so important on some of those records and just in the live performance space of those clubs. And then I guess when the Clint Eastwood film came out about Charlie Parker, they portrayed him as mean because he had a reputation. He was like a short, a height challenged dude. I don't want to call him the derogatory words for that, but he was short, stunted a bit. And you can kind of tell in his vocal cords, but he would like hustle people for tips. So one time, like Bobby Hutcherson had a show. He's like, you can't come in unless you tip me on top of the door. And so they got into a fight, and I guess he sued the Clint Eastwood people, whoever made that film. I think it was Clint Eastwood, for $2 million for like portraying him as a mean old dude. Yeah. But there's this one amazing recording where he talks about Miles Davis during the height of his drug addiction in Detroit. I guess he didn't have a trumpet, he had pawned it, and Clifford Brown had a show. Have you heard this recording?
Okay, is that guy, or is that just because I always thought that was Prophet Jennings.
Oh wait, no, that was Prophet Jennings. Sorry, I'm mixing them up. I'm tripping. Thank you. Yeah, correct me and you can tell the rest of the story.
No, you tell it.
Well, you should. Well, I mean, I thank you for correcting that because I was actually looking for it. I'm like, it's not Pee Wee Marquette. I confused their voices. They both have that like molasses tone, amazing voice.
Yeah.
So Prophet Jennings has a story about Miles Davis in Detroit, no trumpet, on some rainy night. And it was Clifford Brown's show at a venue there. And he just went up to the stage, took his trumpet and played My Funny Valentine. When Prophet tells it, it's a lot better. I could probably find it.
And that motherfucker played My Funny Valentine. And that motherfucker played that song and everybody was crying. And he just walked out,
Yeah. I love that story. And I love it because of Miles Davis being so stubborn. He hated playing ballads because he was so good at it, and him always saying that, and just the brilliance of that and the sadness of it.
Okay, now that just makes me because I don't know if I ever told you, right? So one time I have a friend, he was a graduate student at NYU when I taught here 20 years ago, named Herbie Miller. Herbie Miller used to be road manager for the Wailers, right? He's from Jamaica. And one time after we moved from New York and moved back out to LA, I was teaching at Irvine, I guess, and Herbie came out. And so we hung out for the day. And the first part of the day the last part of the day we actually spent at the house of this guy named Roger Steffens, who was like an actor, kind of a classic kind of Hollywood character actor guy who he lived in Echo Park. But his real sort of secret life was he was like this insane collector of reggae. And he had shit that you can't even imagine, right? Like, so basically Herbie had a whole lot of really rare stuff, early Wailers, like this great song that the Wailers did called Selassie is the Chapel. I don't know if you've ever heard it, right?
Yeah.
And he had the original 45 of it, right? But then the end of the night, what was great was he had these tapes. So evidently what Marley would do is after his shows, he carried a reel-to-reel tape with him everywhere he went. And after the shows, he would go back up to the hotel room and just play. And he would do this kind of improvising thing where he would just play stuff. That was his songwriting process.
Yeah.
So what this guy Roger Steffens had was Marley's reel-to-reel tapes as he's starting to spin out the songs that would eventually become Uprising.
Wow.
right? That last
God.
record.
Yeah.
And so I got a chance to listen to those tapes, you
I
know.
would have been recording on my phone.
Well, this was 20 years ago, so I don't even
Yeah.
know if they
Oh,
had
okay.
phones and could have done it. You know,
Yeah.
it was 18 and 19 years ago anyway. And
Yeah.
but I'll never forget sitting and listening to and then every once in a while you catch a line that you knew from, oh, this is Forever Loving Ja, you know, or something like that. Now are those live recordings, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then at the same time, when you're talking about Prophet, I think if people really want to hear that, they did this great thing called the Miles Davis Radio Project.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Prophet story might be on that, you know,
Yep.
maybe.
I have it on my Tumblr too,
Okay.
on my
But see,
archive.
but before Roger Stephens, that was like the dessert course of the day.
Yep.
Because what we did before that was we spent 6 hours in Prophet Jennings' apartment up in Hollywood.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And he showed us all these home movies he used to make
Oh my
with
God.
like Mingus and
Yep.
Blakey and Monk when he lived in Norway, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh man, I'll never
Oh my
forget
God.
that I guess people didn't probably come here for all of that shit. But
I did.
yeah, probably. Oh man, oh man. Now what is it that a recording does? You know, what do these songs do? What do these stories do? Where do they take us? What gets held in them? What do we pass on? You know, those stories, those chances, you know. It's
Chances
anyway.
is I like calling them chances. Also, one of my favorite
yeah.
Bob Marley lines of all time is when the song Chances Are, when he starts out, chances you are my chances. I'm just obsessed with that construction, but I like thinking of liveness as chance, also as I was kind of thinking of it as like the living versus the dead, because some things that are recorded feel kind of dead. And I was even thinking about back to Miles Davis again, like his music in terms of like when Teo Macero was seen as this hero for coming in and chopping up his studio sessions into these albums. And all I could think when I heard those stories, because Miles Davis has some hilarious recordings where he just hates on Teo Macero because he wouldn't buy new shoes and cheat on his wife. He's like, I hate men like that. When you find something better, you're supposed to, like, he just like went off on how square he was and so I'm like, this is a guy who was mixing his music and he trusted with that. But I want to hear the sessions that he chopped up. I want to hear the raw material and how he made it, you know, polite and presentable for Columbia Records. I don't really care about, you know, what are the albums, even Bitches. I mean, I love Bitches Brew, obviously, but
well, when they started putting out, you know, those box sets of all those sessions with Columbia, they kind of let you catch a little glimpse of that.
Yeah,
you know, a little of those conversations and a little, like particularly like with the In a Silent Way sessions.
Yeah,
you know, and you realize that they weren't playing songs.
No,
you know, they were playing, you know, the subdivision of that music into individual songs was those are editing decisions, you know.
And then
I wondered,
Oh, I was just gonna say, this got me thinking about the idea of the individual song a lot, and just like radio constraints and what was making songs like before radio, and how much more alive and like enzymatic was the music before you could record it into 3 minutes commercial, another 3 minutes, you know. Who has decided the segments and why, you know, songs that seem long, because that's the thing going through these looking for live recordings. Like I really love Gil Scott-Heron live, but obviously his live songs are like 20 minutes long and they aren't recognizable to the recorded versions of the songs at all, which I love. He'll go off on talking about a series of parties he used to throw, and then 10 minutes later he's like kind of singing the verse or whatever. But I don't know. Did radio mess it up? I was gonna play this this Amiri clip really quick.
Okay.
Do you mind? Or do you want to play? Why don't you play?
No, you go.
Just making me think, because you asked about like what is liveness, and basically I can preface it. So let me just play it. Doing too much talking. Let's see.
Who's that swing? Welcome to the John Lewis
Everyone
Show.
hear it?
Everybody get together and let's say hello to John Lewis.
Thank you, Ron.
All right. Yeah, applaud. Yeah. Who's that swing?
Yeah, Ron is swinging me to death. So, Ron, let's say good evening to my co-host, Ron Jefferson.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
right.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have someone here with us this evening. Very prolific. Oh God, that word just came. Prolific, dynamic.
That's a heavy word.
Beautiful. Let's welcome Amity Baraka, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, man. Who's that swing?
So Amity, you look so relaxed, man. I saw you the other night, and I had to invite you on because you was out with your beautiful lady. You understand? And you always have been as quiet as kept now. You always been inspirational to me. You understand what I'm saying? And what have you been doing lately? I haven't seen you in a long time.
Well, let me see. Recently, my wife and I stayed up all night last night looking at, what do we look at? Billie Holiday tapes on VCR and
beautiful.
Elvin Jones and Coleman Hawkins and Monk. We was getting involved with VCR last night. Trying to check that out.
Oh, that's nice.
You see?
I just wanted to play that part.
Yeah.
Just that thing that can come over you when you find a bunch of recorded stuff and
Yeah.
stay up all night. But you should.
Well, I'm just kind of overwhelmed with this feeling like everything I want to play is stuff that I've played so many times to people before. And I think it's partly because I play music all the time when I'm teaching. And then, we've done some sessions before and I'm just scared like everybody's already heard all this stuff before. And part of it is just because I got that weird kind of OCD thing of like, it's just about 8 or 9 things. It's about 8 or 9 books and about 8 or 9 paintings and about 8 or 9 recordings that I have been living on, for the last 40 years. And I'm, can't seem to quit them. But I don't think I played this. So, and it's in a similar vein as the Donny Hathaway. So I'll play. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen. Okay. So you'll know who it is when you hear it. So I'm not going to introduce.
We're a winner, and never let anybody say, boy, you can't make it, cause some people mind is in your way. No more tears do we cry, and we have finally dried our eyes. We're moving on up, moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up now. We're moving on up. We're living proof in all's alert that we're two from the good black dirt, and we're a winner. And everybody knows it too. We just keep on pushing like your leaders tell you to. At last that blessed day has come, and I don't care where you come from. We're all moving on up, moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up now, moving on up. Moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up now. We're moving on up. I don't mind leaving here to show the world we have no fear. Cause we're a winner, and everybody knows it too. We just keep on pushing like your leaders tell you to. At last that blessed day has come, and I don't care where you come from. We're just gonna move on up. Moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up now. We're moving on up. remember reading in your Jet Johnson publications, a whole lot of stations didn't want to play that particular recording, We're a Winner. Can you imagine such a thing? Well, I would say the way I'm sure most of you would say, we don't give a damn, we're a winner anyway. Right on? Yeah, I got a little strength out there tonight. Putting fire under us. Out of sight. It's all right now. We have just another version that we'd like to lay to you about here. Believing very strongly in the equality and freedom for all, and especially we people who are darker than blue. We'd like to just lay another version to you. Trying not to offend anyone, but basically telling it like it is. We're a winner, and never let anybody say, boy, you can't make it, 'cause a feeble man is in your way. No more tears do we cry. The black boy done dried his eyes, and they're moving on up, moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up now, moving on up. There'll be no more Uncle Tom, at last that blessed day has come, and we're a winner, and everybody knows it too. We just keep on pushing, like Martin Luther told you to. And I don't mind leaving here to show the world we have no fear, 'cause we're moving on up, moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up, we're moving on up. So people get ready, I've got good news for you. How we got over, like we're all supposed to do. Let us all say amen, and together we clap our hands, 'cause we're moving on up, moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up now, moving on up. Continue to be a winner, all of you.
Yeah, I love that one, and the thing I love about it is I've been listening to this so much, and I'm convinced that if we started to try to really think about spoken word as a specific poetic genre, to me, Curtis Mayfield is like at the origins of spoken word as a generic innovation, like the way he uses rhyme and the way he is kind of moving always in a kind of intermediary space between speech and song in that way, you know?
Yeah.
And the main thing I love about it is if you ever listen to the original version of We're a Winner, what he does is at the beginning of that song, he tries to create this simulated live environment, you know, which I think is, you know, and that becomes a staple, you know, of late 60s to mid 70s R&B, you know, that simulation of the live environment.
Yeah, the clapping, and that's what I was talking about with Cannonball Adderley. Has these albums where he'll call them live at something and they aren't live. And I don't know why. I mean, I guess there must have been a reason people started doing that all around the same time.
Well, you know that Charles Mingus presents Charles Mingus record, where he tries to simulate.
Yeah. Is that the one where he yells like, "Don't clink the ice in your glass"?
Yeah. He's telling an imaginary audience not to clink their glass, right? Because he wants the energy of a live audience without the presence of actual people, right? So he's trying to simulate the live audience, but he don't want the people. He don't want the you know, all the disturbance.
Yeah, I have this Albert Eiler recording I probably won't play, but where he's talking about how he didn't like venues because it's like, people don't be listening at the clubs, like it's disrespectful. And a lot of jazz musicians felt that way. And it's hard to put yourself in that mindset because I think we were just indoctrinated in like, it's a party, but they're serious musicians. They weren't like necessarily trying to play parties after the big band era.
Yeah.
They were trying to just play their music, and especially some of the free jazz people were like,
I remember hearing this, you know, Kevin Beasley, you know, the artist, the DJ, it's like this kind of brilliant guy, he's like a DJ, but a sculptor too. He
Okay.
does these amazing sort of somehow into space between sculpture and sound art. But he did, I heard him one time do this kind of DJ set, and he played, I want to say it was Yusuf Lateef. But it might have been, it could have been Eiler, but he's got but one of these musicians is complaining about the club setting, right?
Yep.
And he kept just saying, his refrain was, and they be drinking and whatnot to the music,
yes,
right? They be drinking and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is that Eiler?
Yes.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
I should probably play it. Should I just find it? I have it kind of queued up. Do you want to hear it or not?
Yeah, but here's the real freaky part is we be doing all this hanging out evidently when neither one of us are actually there.
Yeah,
Okay,
pretty
so
much. Yeah,
we gotta figure that shit out, you know.
spooky action at a distance.
Yeah.
No, I've been
thank you.
playing because I've been making a mix, and that Isla recording is like central.
Okay,
to it.
okay.
So
okay.
I might be able to find it quickly. If I can't, I'll play something else because I was gonna
Okay.
play. some
Okay.
roots. Let's see what I can do.
Exactly. The music that I'm playing and other musicians that are the same caliber, who I would say like Arne Coleman and people like that.
Yeah.
You know, I would say the music that we're playing is like it's our own classical music,
Right.
in a sense of speaking. So it doesn't make sense for us to play a lot of the clubs like the Village Gate, Village Vanguard, and Slugs and places like that. You know, because as it already I've stated before, the people, they be drinking and whatnot to the music, you know.
Yeah.
They don't take time out to listen to the music. So I haven't played a job now in a long time. The last record I made was I made 2 records for Impulse last year. It was September.
Right.
I made 2 records for Impulse, and they give me a nice amount of money for the record. So in other words, by that, I would have to like save my money, so I would have to go into these clubs where the guys be playing, because they don't be making that much money. In other words, I had to wait until the picking was good. I had to wait on the picking, because I noticed other musicians who have gone into the clubs, after a while, the smoke and everything, you know, it's not a concertized thing.
Sorry, that was
Yeah.
weird sound. It was in my garage band, but
It's not a concertized thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love Eiler. I'm obsessed with his speaking voice, but also his like the way he puts phrases together.
Mm.
He's really trying not to be mean, but you can tell he just wants to like cuss everyone out and be more like Miles and Mingus, but he's holding back. I don't know. He grew up playing golf and stuff, so he's like a lot more polite. He's like coming from a different temperament.
Cleveland golfers, you know. But no, it reminds me of Baraka talking about him, you know, in his autobiography, talking about how I guess he showed up at some concert the Train gave, maybe at Carnegie Hall, even maybe someplace, and he's in the back of the room shouting, you know, y'all think the music is about you. It's not about you, you know. And you know, although now that I hear his voice, there's got to be a few octaves higher than that. It's more piercing, huh? Because he's got a higher voice than that, you know. But
He has
man,
one of those high voices that is like pure tone. Like some people have high squeaky voices,
yeah,
but he has like a tonal, like a song voice, you know, like bird song versus like the squawk of certain high pitched
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like the voice of his horn a little bit. But that's funny that we both had memorized that.
Yeah. 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 It's, yes. Obsessed minds think alike.
Pretty much.
So
I haven't played any songs. But
play some songs.
Well, I was gonna play this. I have a lot of different songs, but I feel like I've been thinking about how hip hop doesn't really sound that great recorded.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That might be like a messed up statement, but I haven't heard many hip hop albums that are recorded that sound that good, like live concert recordings.
Mhm.
Or people don't try it the way they did with jazz and soul and rock and funk
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything. I don't know why, but the one that I go back to is that Roots Come Alive album.
Mm-hmm.
I used to listen to that all the time, and I feel like it's really good. And part of what makes it really good is they had like a whole brass section, and they did, because part of the like spectacle, or the what makes a live recording have so much more texture than something in the studio, is the backup singers and the placement of different bodies on a stage,
Mm-hmm.
and the way, it becomes more of a it's just more of a group experience. Usually with the recordings, they're in different rooms. The backup singers will record at one point, and then you're forced to improvise because you're all doing it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just that hip hop is so like unilaterally one individual that unless it's a really great MC, like Mos Def is I think there are some live recordings of him that are good, depending on, I don't know, performance style. It just doesn't work as well to document.
I heard some good live recordings of well, I don't even know if it was Eric B and Rakim. It was certainly Rakim. I don't know if he was even still with Eric B at the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I almost feel like he's so much just in the groove of his own thing.
Yeah.
Like his thing is just so he's so precise,
Mhm.
that it just comes out
Work.
the way it will come out anyway,
Yeah.
He makes changes every once in a while. He cuss a little bit more on the live recordings than he ever really did on the studio stuff. But like I said, a saying, a smooth operator operating correctly, on what's that microphone thing? He said, a smooth motherfucker operating, but it was shocking to hear him say it, It's like, damn, Imam, you can't say that, can you?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I might be wrong. I want to be wrong. I think I haven't done enough listening. And my favorite thing in terms of like a live format with hip hop is usually like ciphers, like watching people get together on the sidewalk and like battle each other is more fun than watching like a live staged concert.
Yeah.
Or even on radio shows sometimes, like the BBC shows when they'll have people do freestyles. Those tend to be dope because it's like they're fighting in the ring at that moment.
Yeah. No, that's true.
This Root song, or do you want to play that Rakim?
No, I don't think I have. I think I got it like on a cassette tape. I don't even know how to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, I'll play this Come Alive.
Okay.
It's not that it's the best thing in the world. It's just that it's different than the album recording in an interesting way.
I had some fun with that one right there.
You'll hear it.
That shit is taking me back. Word 'em up. Hey, yeah. How many people ready for this joint right here? How many people recognize this song? This shit right here is called You Got Me, you know what I mean? It's on our album, which is called Things Fall Apart. And we got this shit, you know what I mean? And on the song, Erykah Badu is singing the chorus. This real smoothed out melodic shit, but guess what? Tonight, I'm gonna introduce you to the young lady from Philadelphia that actually wrote that piece. You know what I'm saying? Check it out. And she down with the Roots crew, and she go by the name of Miss Jill Scott. I want y'all to put y'all hands together. Say what? Give it up. Jelly from Philly. Word up. You're not ready. Alright, now for all of y'all out there that know how this song go, I want y'all to sing along with love. You know what I mean? And if you don't know, then just open your minds and your ears and feel this shit. She keep telling me.
If you were worried about where I've been or who I saw, what club I went to with my homies, baby, don't worry, you know that you got me. If you were worried about where I've been or who I saw, what club I went to with my homies,
check it out, baby, don't worry, you know right. Somebody told me that this planet was small. We used to live in the same building on the same floor. Never met before until I'm overseas on tour and beat this Ethiopian queen from Philly taking classes abroad. She studying film and photo flash, focus record. Said she working on a flick and cut my clip through the score. Said she loved my show in Paris at Elysee Montmartre, and that I stepped off the stage and took a piece of her heart. We knew from the start fall apart and tend to shatter. She like, that shit don't matter. When I get home, get at her through letter, phone, whatever. Let's link, let's get together. Shit, you think not? What I went home and forgot? Time passed, we back to Philly. She up in my spot, telling me the things I'm telling her was making her hot. Started building with her constantly like Jill Scott. Now she in my world like Kim Hop and keep telling me, yeah.
if you were worried about
Say what?
where
You know that you got
me. If you were worried about where I've been or who I saw, what club I went to with my homies, baby, don't worry, you know that you got
Hey yo, me, I'm the type that's always catching a fly. Sometimes I got to be out at the height of the night. That's when she flipping, get on some old that ain't right. It seems like I'm on the side and you're in love with your mind. I know you gotta get that paper, daddy, keep that shit tight. But I need some sort of love in my life. You dig me? Now I was talking with my sister from New York City. She said she know this ball player and he think I'm pretty. Side, I'm playing boo, you know it's just with you I'm staying. And when brothers is popping game, I don't hear what they saying. So when you out there in the world, I'm still your girl. With all my classes, I don't have the time for life's thrills. So when you sweating on stage, think of me when you rhyme. And don't be listening to your homies, they be eating you blind. When I could trust her, word like I'm a king for real. New York, y'all know relationships get ill. And chill, telling me, yeah.
If you were worried about
Say what?
where I've been or who I saw, what club I went to with my homies, baby, don't worry, you know that you got
Say what?
me. If you were worried about where
yeah.
I've been or who I saw, what club I went to with my homies, baby, don't worry, you know that you got
That
me.
snake could be that chicken and rap, could be that cool cat. That's whispering, she trying to play you for the fool cat. If something's on your chest, then let it be known. See, I'm not your every 5 minutes all on the phone. And on the topic of trust, it's just a matter of fact that people write backs and fracture us intact and never ever be. I ain't on some yo, I'm a celebrity. I deal with the real, so if it's artificial, let it be. I've seen people go to love like whirlwinds, listening to these squads and fucking with girlfriends. That's exactly the point where they whole world is. Lies come in, that's where the drama begins. And she like, oh yeah.
I've been or who I saw.
Y'all know this shit? Sing along. Make some noise. Turn the club up. 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 Come on. All right now. Turn the club up. Get up. All right now. Word
Mhm. Uh,
Just good.
oh yeah, yes, yes, yeah, yes. Hmm.
I love it because in hearing it live, you hear how much it is about the tensions of performers and traveling, and it's like a song. It has
Mm.
liner notes within the live version,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
like the way they introduce the vocalists. And Jill Scott is an underrated treasure in terms of how great she is
Mhm,
at doing things live,
mhm.
I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
um, but that might be my favorite like live recorded hip hop song, just because it has all the components that I love, like improvising, the vocalists, the
mhm.
the amazing drums and how they're different than they are on the album. They don't
Yeah,
seem pathetic in any way.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it's something to be said for having a band, you
yeah,
know.
that,
Um,
yeah,
you know, I mean, it's not, you know, within the context of even if Isla wouldn't call it a concertized thing, but it's
yeah.
but it's something approaching that, you
Mhm.
know, in a way that, you know, that's different, you know, than than what you might hear in a different kind of club, particularly
Yeah.
when, you know, the primary activity is the dancing rather than the making of the music, you know, in a certain
Yeah.
kind of way. But yeah, the hip hop scene is kind of a mix of that in a way. It's cool. There's so much stuff. There's so much
Messed
stuff.
up part now. I mean, I go to a lot of live, well, before,
Mhm.
2020, I went to a lot of live hip hop shows, and like people do not dance. Hip hop
Yeah,
became almost the least fun genre to see live
yeah,
for me in some
yeah.
ways, because people, not to hate, but it's a lot of like hip hop head, hyper masculine dudes, literally with backpacks of the records they want to get signed at the end of the show, who crowd
Yeah.
around and stare at the board, and just like no one dances. There's no room for like live enjoyment of the music. It's just this weird obsessive energy of people
Yeah,
who are obsessed with the MCs,
yeah,
and it's just not fun. But I
yeah.
remember like back in the day, it used to be way more chaotic and fun from what I remember. Like in college, I went to go see the Roots live, and it was
Mhm.
nothing like that. And it was one of the best concerts I've ever been to. But
No, it's kind of like in that on Missy's Under Construction album, she has those little interludes, you know, uh right after Work It. She's like admonishing the hip hop crowd for not, you know, doing the bankhead or the moonwalk, you know. This is hip hop, y'all. This is hip hop, you know, and it's like,
yeah,
but shit, that was what, 96 or something. I mean, that's
yeah,
or something. So it's something else going on. I'm too old to know, you know. I'm too old to know.
it's
But yeah.
drugs. It's more of, I mean, it's more like the Molly Percocet jumping up and down. The most lively I've seen a show was when a DJ played that Future song, and
Yeah.
everyone started jumping vertically, not dancing, just like the
Yeah.
vertical trampoline of a crowd that's really into drug anthems.
Well,
Um,
there's a kind of movement that we recognize as movement, but that we don't necessarily recognize as dance, but maybe we should recognize it as dance. You know,
that's
it's
true
like,
too. Yeah.
man, I was talking to a friend of mine today, great artist, you know, Greg Bordowitz, and he was telling me about this book that somebody wrote about. It's called The Heebie-Jeebies at CBGB's. And it's like the secret history of Jews in New York punk music, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, it just something rang in my head where it was like, I remember one of the greatest shows I've ever been to live was in San Francisco, probably must have been 87 or 88, maybe 89. with my best friend from graduate school, Tom Sheehan. And he would take me, he introduced me to beer and punk, you know? And so we would go to shows all the time.
Mhm.
And I remember we went to this show to see in this little club on Valencia in the Mission. And it was like 8 people there. It was this band called the Melvins, you know, which is this, you know, pretty seminal, so to speak, you know, group. And the Melvins was playing, and they had these big ass speakers that must have been like 9 feet tall.
Damn.
And there were 4 people on one speaker and 4 people from the other speaker, and everybody was going like this. And when he said that shit about the Jewish, I was like, it was as if those speakers were the Wailing Wall, right?
Yeah.
And we were just, and it was some weird punk prayer kind of shit that was going on or something, you know, and it was, I wouldn't recognize it as dance, you know, but actually it reminds me of another story about another show I went to with Tom at this club. I can't even remember the name of it. It was on Divisadero in San Francisco. This great band, never made it big, but I wish they had kind of this little band called MCM and the Monster. They were like a early version of Primus, you know, you know, or even, you know, maybe they were kind of in the wake of the Beastie Boys, you know, they had that kind of punk hip hop kind of mix. But then they would play all this root shit, right? So they were playing this version, like a funk version of the old Elvis song, Little Sister. And they had all these fans who were there, you know, to slam.
Yeah.
So it was all these confused, weird ass white dudes with mohawks listening to this funk music, and they didn't know what to do, right? Like they didn't know what to do or how to, and it was that it was music that you were supposed to dance to, but they were like, we don't dance like that. And finally, the guy who was the front man for the band, whose name was Miles. So MCM stood for Master of Ceremonies Miles.
Okay.
And at one point he just said, come on, everybody, form a pit. And them fools started slamming. One dude almost hit me right in the jaw. I had to duck my ass out of there because I wasn't down for that shit. But it was funny, I remember. It was always like, you know, people just, maybe there's just still this whole question of how to work out what the proper movements would be, you know, or what, you know.
I shouldn't police movement like that. You're absolutely right. I think
you should police it. Go ahead and police it. Shit.
Well, it's stillness that annoys me. It's when people just go and stand and watch in a stupor that I'm like, why did you even come? Because you could do that at home with your headphones on. But jumping or nodding, anything is better than that.
It was the Kennel Club. That's what it was. The Kennel Club. yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's funny. It's sometimes, you know, you have to create a situation and allow people to be in that situation long enough to work out what the movements can be, you know, and man, this music is all so young. Yeah. Right? Like it's all so new. The history of it is so accelerated. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like Black music is on a speed up, you know? Yeah. Other shit has 115, 120 years to work out some protocols. And, you know, Black music got like 20 years maybe to work out protocols. And then it's done, it's gone, it's over, you know, or it's faded in a certain kind of way, you know? Yep. But yeah,
there should, I mean, I think people are more creative when there's no protocol. Like, I'm glad people don't have some organized dance that they're forced to do at the club. So that's a positive thing. Or like Kanye recently sold out this Atlanta stadium and just stood there with a mask on over like a ski mask on his head and just, you know, played his album, just standing still, chilling like that. That should also be valid, even if it's performative.
Yeah. We need to. Kanye needs a hug, man. So.
Yeah, he needs several hugs, but I feel like I don't know. There's something interesting about his antics of late, but we'll see where they lead.
Here goes something good.
Yeah.
I think you'll like this. You probably heard it. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen or my sound. Let's see. Turn up my. Although, now that was weird. So what I did was I faded out instead of turning the thing off.
Yep. Yeah, I did that.
So that was on my other playlist. And that was Luther, if you heard just for a second,
Yep.
Bad Boy Having a Party, which is another one of those simulating the social
Live.
experience of the song in the song, you know, with the, anyway, but this is a different thing here. So hopefully it'll, see, I gotta recalibrate my, here we go.
Dorothy was a waitress on the promenade. She worked the night shift. Dishwater blonde, tall and fine. She got a lot of tips. Earlier I've been talking stuff, finding room, finding with lovers' pairs. I needed someone with a quicker wit than mine. Dorothy was famous. Well, I ordered. Yeah, let me get a fruit cocktail. I ain't too hungry. Dorothy laughed. It said it sound like a real man to me. You're kind of cute. You want to take a bath? Do you want a bath? And I said, cool. But I'm leaving my pants on. What you say? 'Cause I'm kind of good. Someone. She said, sound like a real man to me. Mind if I turn on the radio? My favorite song, she said, it was Johnny singing, help me, I'm falling rain. She said, ooh, heaven's gone, can't be excused. Right then and there, I knew I was through. They came on, but she didn't see the movie 'cause she didn't run the book fast. She was going on by witches' curse. Though they made me laugh, I felt much better, so I went back to the violet room. Let me tell you what I did. Oh, I took another bubble bath, my pants on, all the fighting sound. Next time I'll do it too.
man,
All good.
that band is like,
Yeah.
it's like Weather Report with Zavanu and Shorter in there, man. I mean, they're just playing everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wonder, you know how people say, or I've heard like Charlie Parker, like he sounded so good and no one ever captured on a record.
Mm.
I wonder if that was true of Prince on some level, like the live Prince versus the recordings, even though his albums tend to be good. I just feel like he was a live artist or living, you know, just some people hide.
Well, I remember when being old and all, I remember they used to have this show called Rock Concert.
Mhm.
It was the host was some dude named Don Kirshner, who was like a rock singer. He could come on at all odd hours of the night, you know.
Mhm.
And there was another show called what was it called? Like the Midnight Special, you know. And I was on one of those shows. It must have been 1979
Mhm.
when I first saw Prince. You know, when it wasn't the first record, it was the second record. I guess it was, you know, the hit was "I Want to Be Your Lover," and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" You know, you know, it was like, I mean, I'm down there. I'm in Kingsland, Arkansas. You know, 300 people. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, "What is this?" You know, but I remember listening to it and looking at the way that the stuff was staged, and the band looked so perfunctory. I think back then if I'm not mistaken, maybe what was that dude that used to play with him? Was it Andre Simone or one of them two? You know, anyway. But I remember the next, you know, and then you kind of, now by 84, you know, Purple Rain came out. And I remember going to see the movie, and the big revelation to me, because I started, you know, I was reading what journalists were saying about Prince, and they were talking about, there was all this discourse about a Minneapolis sound. And one of the things I remember them saying was that, well, one of Prince's main innovations is that what in the 70s, you know, R&B charts, what R&B performers were doing in the mid 60s all the way through the late 70s with horn arrangements, Prince was just doing that on the keyboard, you know? And then and once they said that, I could hear, I was like, okay, yeah, that is right. That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
So it was like this big revelation to see him with a band.
Yeah.
Rather than just thinking of him as this recording, as this kind of, you know, guy who was playing everything himself, you know, and using the synthesizers to fill in.
Yeah.
And so it's just my long-winded way of agreeing with you, because I'm thinking, it turns out, you know, like his natural habitat, it was a band, you know, and you can see that already in Purple Rain, but you can certainly see it, you know, in that what I just played. And so yeah, we missed a lot of stuff, I guess. We should have been able to see. You know,
in a way, that's where the whole thing you started with about documenting comes back for me, where it's like, that's why we need people to tell the stories, like of Miles Davis playing My Funny Valentine. It's almost better to hear that than to try to capture a night that involved people in a room where it just happened once sometimes, you know? Because so much less is lost in translation with a really good storyteller. And then it makes you want that for now. So it makes you want to create a world where concerts that great can happen now. Like, what urgency do we need to set up for ourselves in listening so that the Miles Davis of today can be in that situation, and there can be that level of just like real telepathic music being born on stages live, you know? Well, although, I mean, that's a tall order. I'm extra. I know. I just have high hopes for what also for what autonomy in venue making can do. Like thinking about like Art Ensemble of Chicago and the orchestra, and how much, forget the live recordings, just I love listening to rehearsal sessions of collectives, because that was really the live aspect of it, of like every day you're just rehearsing and you're with a live band that's basically a family.
Yeah.
And to think about how that can't often happen in concert hall. You know, most people, it's a luxury to get to rehearse with a band. Just like now we don't have any big bands. Imagine touring with like 20 musicians and all their instruments now. That was done after Duke Ellington and them.
Yeah.
But if we could have spaces where that could be happening, I think liveness, like even if you and I were rehearsing, you know, together to read poems together, like the more people come together to do these things, the better live experiences become. And so I think it kind of brings me to that, what you were talking about, like it starts with experience and then accepting and being humbled by the fact that what you're really trying to do is document your experience, and it's not that glamorous. It's not like you're not inventing as much as you are learning how to communicate with accuracy what actually went down.
But you're trying to practice.
Yeah.
You know, trying to practice so that you can have a practice.
Yep.
You know, to quote the great Allen Iverson, but against his grain. I'm talking about practice.
Yeah.
Not a game. Practice.
Where am I getting the phrase understanding readiness? Was that Amiri who said that, or some? I don't know. There's something written with that title, and I can't remember who wrote it or what it is. But
understanding readiness. Yeah.
I feel like this. On the one hand, it's like an obstruction. This idea that you have to be ready before you do something, and that's what practice is good for, to remind you that you're never ready. And that you just go do the shit. You just move all weird and awkward until you get the movement.
But you're never completely ready, but you want to be.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this great dance scholar who wrote about contact improvisation and writes about the sort of politics of contact improvisation, named Danielle Goldman.
Okay.
She got this brilliant book on that called I Want to Be Ready.
Did she write about the Revelations, Ailey? With the whole, I used to teach that, so I know that whole.
Who she's writing about is she writes about Bill Dixon and Judith Dunn.
Yeah.
But then she writes about SNCC's sort of readiness training for nonviolent non-cooperation as a modality of contact improvisation.
I have to read this. Will you?
Yeah.
I'm going to put the title. Will you tell me the title again?
It's called I Want to Be Ready.
Okay.
It's by Danielle Goldman. She teaches now at the New School.
Okay.
But it's a great book. I mean, it's a brilliant book, and it's really about this sort of sense of the necessity of kind of constant rehearsal, you know. It's definitely, I got to go back and look at it, because meditating on Robert Moses, you know, who just passed, and it brings a song to mind. It's just not a live recording.
Is it the I Want to Be Ready spiritual? Because that's what, and now I'm hearing that.
Song. It's actually Al Green's variation on it.
Oh.
You know, it's just a moment.
You want to play it?
It's a song called Everything's Gonna Be All Right.
You want to play it?
Yeah, I'll play this, and then you play the last one. So let's see if I got it. If I got it, I'll play it. Okay, hold on. It's gonna take me a little while to get it. Got too much stuff on here.
Same. Navigating a web of chaos on my desktop.
Okay, here we go. It's like it's kind of like Al Green doing Al B. Sure doing Al Green.
Yes.
don't you ever go astray. Trust in God's word and believe it, 'cause it'll never pass away. We'll see him in his glory, riding on the clouds of joy, greeting us with open arms and peace forevermore. I know that everything is gonna be alright. He's coming back like he said he would. Yeah, it's gonna be alright. He's coming back for the true and good. Now when the sky is darkened, there won't be no moonlight. We'll know that time has finally come, and he'll change the wrong to right. So if you're always searching, trying to find the bottom line, just give your love and life to God. He'll give you peace of mind. I know that everything is gonna be alright. He's coming back like he said he would. I say, yeah, it's gonna be alright. He's coming back for the true and good. Play it. He's coming back just like he said he would. Yeah, it's gonna be alright. He's coming back for the true and good.
Here it comes. I wanna be ready. Got to be ready. Got to be ready. I wanna be ready.
Got to be ready. Got to be ready for the peace of love and happiness. It's coming back.
Yeah.
Sanctified Al Green.
Uh-huh. I wanna be ready.
Yeah,
Got to be. Yeah.
I just love that phrase.
Yeah. Yeah. Got to be ready.
Readiness.
Yeah, didn't Hamlet says some shit about that, right?
Does he?
The readiness is all, right?
Huh. I love that. Yeah.
At the towards the end, you
Yeah.
know.
It's true. I feel like, I mean, it's almost like Baldwin's welcome table concept. Like,
Yeah.
you're just always resetting a table.
Yeah. Yeah. Want to
Trying to
prepare a table to prepare.
Invite the homies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get some people, you know, if you build it, they will come mentality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Take us out now.
Yeah, I'll take us out. I feel like it didn't come up, but I have to play something from Beyonce's Homecoming.
Okay.
Just because her, you know, she's like the live artist of today that makes liveness worth living through in a way. I mean, she really works hard as hell, and talk about rehearsal. Like that's a really interesting, you could talk for 2 hours just on how she made that whole performance come together, even though it was at this terrible corporate festival.
Mm.
I'm just gonna play a track from that.
yourself. Don't hurt yourself. When you play me, you play yourself. Don't play yourself. When you lie to me, you lie to yourself. You're only lying to yourself. When you hurt me, you hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. You just gotta let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, baby. Hey, baby, who the fuck do you think I am? I smell like fragrance on your Louis Vuitton. Just get his fat ass a big kiss, boy. Tonight I'm fucking up all your shit, boy.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman.
I am the dragon, breathe the fire.
The most unprotected person in America is the black woman.
Beautiful man, I'm the lion.
The most neglected person in America is the black woman.
Beautiful man, I know you're lying.
This is your final warning. You know I give you life. If you try this shit again, you gon' lose your wife.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks, Beyonce. Thanks, Harmony. Harmony, I want you to come back. And I you know, we can wait as long as it takes, but but maybe we should, for those of you who don't want to wait, maybe we should end there. Fred, how are you feeling?
Yeah, it's about time to go. So
Okay. So Harmony, if you got some last words, type them into the chat. Fred and Harmony, thank you so much. Fred mentioned Greg Bordowitz, and Fred will join us again on October 2nd at PS1 for the launch of a book that we're publishing by Greg called Some Styles of Masculinity. And Harmony, I'm sure, will be joining us soon in some capacity, maybe many capacities. Thanks again, and hope to see you all soon, hopefully sweating, improvising, rubbing up against one another. And yeah, until then, on Zoom or maybe elsewhere.
Yeah.